it's Marianne from Thrive, and in today's video I'm going to be talking to you about two of the most popular or most common functions that I see used in Microsoft Excel, the IF and the SUMIF. Now, these are functions where we're asking Excel to do some logical comparisons for us. We're asking it to do a little bit of the thinking and give us a response in return. So it's not a straightforward equation or mathematical function or formula. It's where we start bringing in logic and we start asking Excel to do some of the thinking. Now, an if is where we start, and it's one of the most popular functions that are used in Excel, because what it does is it asks you ask Excel to look at the data and then return an answer based on what you're looking for. So an if statement has two results. It's where it's looking at something and it gives you a true or a false response. So we look at the data and we say, if, I use the word if a lot. I'm going to use the word if a lot in this video. But if something is higher than this number, if it is, if it has a yes in it, if it has a no in it, if it has this word in it, give me this response. And you give it those very black and white. So it's pass, fail, yes, no, up, down, two sides of a coin. The interesting thing with an if is that you have to give it both options or Excel will have a little meltdown. All right. So Excel underneath is a truly logical system, and it doesn't like it when you start to play around with things and you give it half of the information. Remember, Excel wants the function to work. It wants to do the calculation and it wants to see it through, but it will always work in a logical sequence. So an if is where we might say, if the cell here says 1, give me a yes. If it says anything else, give me a no. Or if it says 2, give me a no. You can give it those parameters, but what you want to do is make sure that you've given it both a true and a false response. Because what Excel's going to do is take your data and look at it through that lens and say, right, Marianne's asked me to look at this data and look for a yes and a no. So I might say, if it's a 1, I want a yes. If it's a 2, I want a no. So it's going to look through the data, and everything that's got a 1, it's going to give me a yes in that column. It's going to look through the data again if I look at a different cell with the same equation or same function, and it might have a 2 in it, so I'll say, well, that's a no. But then there might be a cell that has a 3 in it, and it's going to freak out because it doesn't have any kind of understanding for that. So it will leave it blank or you'll get an error. Okay, so think about the data that you're asking it to look through, and then make sure that your function is written the correct way. All right, so that's the if function. Now I'm going to jump to my screen in a second and we're going to look at the formula structure and how that works. But so that you know, the syntax or the rules for how that formula is broken down is that we have equals if, which tells Excel that we're now going to open up that function. And then the parts that it needs are, what is the logical test you want me to perform? What do I return if it's a yes or true? And what do I return if it's false? So we're putting 3 pieces of data into this function. For an if function to work, it needs all 3 pieces. If you miss a piece or you choose an incorrect cell for it to reference, that's when you're going to have a problem. So let's jump in and work in Excel and have a look at this in action. We're going to get in and have a look at our if function now. And what I'm going to ask it to do this time, I've got 2 tables set up on the screen here, and we're going to do an if function and do it in 2 different ways so you can see the possible options here. Now, for reference, I'm working on a Mac today on the desktop version of Excel. So if you're working on a PC or on the Word version, on the web version, not the Word version, then your window may look a little bit different, but the function itself will work the same way, okay? Now, I've created these 2 tables. They're exactly the same. What I've got here is that in this box in B2, if A2 says yes, I want it to return a 1. If A2 says no, I want it to return a 2. So the code is 1 for yes and 2 for no. Then we're going to flip that around here and we've got active. I'm going to have the if function look at it this way and say, if D2 is 1, return a yes. And if D2 is a 2, return a no. All right, so you can see we're doing that flip side option. So in this instance, we are going to simply hit the equals button, and that is going to tell Excel we want to do a function. Then we're going to type the type of function that it is. So that term, by putting if at the beginning, tells it that this is now, there's a series of information I'm going to give you, and you're going to be able to return the result I want. So see, as you start to type that, whether you type it up here in the box up here or whether you're typing it here, the moment you start typing if, it's going to pull up this drop down list, and it's going to want to do the work for you. It wants to step you through it. It wants you to get it right. So we need to tell it, what is the logical test? What do we want to know? And the answer at the moment is that we want if, and that's cell A2. So if A2 equals yes, and then we do a comma. So if it says yes, what do you tell me? So if it's yes, I want you to give me a 1, comma. If it's a no, if it's anything but yes, I want you to give me a 2, and we will close brackets. Oops. I have to put, sorry, I forgot. When you are looking for it to look for some specific information, we need to put quotation marks around the text. There we go. So you can see here, up here, we've got the quotation marks around our yes. And what that does is it tells Excel to look very much specifically. You have to look for these letters, okay? So that is now. So if I change this to no, it's going to put it as a 2. If I take the text out, it will stay as a 2. If I was to put maybe, it will stay as a 2. Anything that is not yes will give me a 2. The moment I put the word yes in, it goes back to 1. So it can only give me one of two choices. So I have to choose what the true answer is. Everything else is incorrect. So there is one true answer and then everything else is incorrect. But what I have to tell Excel is that anything that is incorrect returns something. If you wanted it to return a blank, you would simply pop in 2 quotation marks, 2 sets of like a set of quotation marks with nothing in between. What that does is says leave it blank. Okay, so that's the other option you've had. So you can have anytime it says yes, give us a 1, anything else, leave it blank. So that's where we're asking it to look at the text. On the flip side here, we're going to now ask it to, we're going to do the inverse of that function. So we're going to ask it in this instance to say equals if. Now, what I want to do this time is, this is D2, and if it equals 1, yes or no. And again, if D2 equals, we do need to put those quotation marks around because we're asking it to look very specifically for that. Oh, no, it doesn't like that. I'm just going to click on my little FX button. There we go. D2 equals 1. Value if true, yes. And you can see as I type it in, it's putting in the answer here, so I'll put no here. And as I've tabbed through, so if I click that little FX, it's putting them around. So yeah, again, it's wherever there's text. So if I change this to 2, we get no. If I change this to 50, we get no. If I go back to 1. So you can see what happens is, sorry, I always get where the quotation marks go wrong. So anything that goes around physical text has to have those quotation marks. So in this example, we're asking it, if this cell says yes, give me a 1, otherwise blank. I can change this here. I could make this, I can literally just pull this back. If I get rid of those, I can give it a different number. So if we put maybe, it'll give me a 2. Likewise here, if I put 3, it's a no. If I put 1, if I leave it blank, it's going to be a no, because the rule here is whatever is in here, if it is a 1, it's yes. If it's anything else, it's a no. It's that 2 sides of a coin, all right? So as an example, you would have here, maybe a good example might be if we could change this one, and we could have if D2 equals more than 50. This one might be pass, and this one might be fail. Oh, yep. So if this is 49, it's fail. If this is 51, it's pass. So you can see in that instance, we've got if D2 is greater than or equals 50. Sorry, I got my greater than ran the wrong way there. So if it's greater than 50, it's a pass. If it's 50 or less, it's a fail. So that's great if you are putting scores or results of an assessment in. You'll be able to see straight away based on what your rules are. And then, of course, we can drag this down, and then I can put other codes in here. So I can put 80, 25, 49, 50, and so on. And so I would be able to have scores and then pull that down. So just once I've got it once, we do that corner one and I can pull it down, and that gives me that pass fail. So that is your if function, where you have two specific answers and you can use it to give you a result without having to manually go in and put it in. So that's our if function, and you can see that what it does is it lets us do those very black and white solutions. What we're going to do now is take that upper level and we're going to look at the next stage of our function, which is where we're layering on a SUMIF function. So what this does is it returns a sum of the values in a range or a group of cells that meet the specific conditional criteria for that true-false question. So we do an if, but we do it across a range of cells and come back with a result, okay? So the structure here is very similar to our if, because we need to give it three pieces of information. The three pieces are the range of cells that we're looking at. So cells that those cells have to have numbers, names, or the references that have numbers. Blank cells and text values aren't included. So because the range is what we're doing a sum of, it's a mathematical equation. So we're going to add up those particular cells. So it might be the ages of people who are born after a certain period of time. Or it might be the score results for people who enrolled after this period. Or the example I'm going to do uses Pokemon and some different scores and results based on different types of Pokemon. So we're going to be looking at the total scores for the grass ones, the fire ones, the water ones. So we can group them without having to manually produce those results. So we're looking at scores, numbers, ages, those sorts of prices, those sorts of things. Then the second one is the criteria. So that's the condition for the range. So that can be a cell reference, a text, like a specific piece of text, a function in itself. So in our example, it's going to be where we've got the type of Pokemon. So it's going to be our grass or our water. So it's going to be adding up the score where it finds grass. And then you can put a sum range, which is the range you want it to use for the calculation and condition as well. So we're going to jump in. This one it sounds complicated when we do it like this, but once you see it on the sheet, it will make a lot more sense. So in this example, we're now going to be looking at how to get the totals, as I mentioned, of my Pokemon, and I want to be able to find all of my grass Pokemon totals, all of my fire, and all of my water. So I've got an individual Pokemon's result, but I want to group them together by type. Now, in this example, they are very neatly together, and I could simply scan over them and I could do a sum, or I could just pop down in the corner here where it's got my equation. However, if you've got large portions of data and they're not in any order, and you'll see that we'll mess around with some of these to change the totals, but you'll realize that this is actually a much better way of working. So we're going to go up into our function bar, we're going to go equals and SUMIF to tell Excel what we're doing. So now I need to give it those three pieces of data: the range, the criteria, and what we're going to sum. So the range is what are we looking for? So we're looking for all of this data at the moment. This is where I want it to do its first filter. And then what do I want it to look for? Now, I'm going to get it to look for grass. And we need to put that in quotation marks because it's a text result. And then what do I want it to add up? If it finds grass, I want it to add up these cells. So when we look at the equation, and I love the way Excel does this with our colors for us, but basically in this cell, I want Excel to look at cells B2 to B10, find the word grass, and then add up the cell that matches in the C2 to C10 column. So we should have 3 results and it should come to 1, 2, 4, 8. So if I click enter, ta-da! So what it's doing is it's looking for the 3 grass types and it's adding those up. Perfect. Now, what I can do is I can copy, Control-C or Command-C and paste this here. And it has made some changes, so I will need to go back and just edit this slightly. So it now needs to be B2 to B10, but I'm going to change this one in here. I don't want it to be grass anymore. I want it to be fire. And then this will be C2 to C10. Okay. Oops, what's happened there? B2 to B10. Fire, C2 to C10. It is 1, 2, 4, 8 again. Of course it is. And then here, I'll do this one from scratch, equals SUMIF, and then we choose our range, comma, we choose our title, which is going to be water, and comma, and then we choose what do we want it to add. So we're putting those extra filters in this time. And this one is 1249. And if I click on here, you'll see that that is correct. So now how do we test that it's actually doing the math for us properly? I'm going to change a couple of these. I'm going to say, actually, that's a fire one. Oh, grass has gone down, fire has gone up, because the filters that are working all of the time have now reassessed. It's looking at it now and it's saying, well, there's only 2, so I can only return this sum. I can only add up those results. Likewise, there are now 4 of these, and we can always do our comparison here. Likewise, I might make this one a grass, and I might make this total 406. And you can see the data is live all the time. It's adding it up and refiltering it. Where is the grass? What is the total next to grass? This is how I'll add them up. What is fire? How do I add those up? So any changes that you make, if I was to add another one here, this wouldn't work because we're only looking at these cells. We're only looking at B2 to B10. Anything under here won't work. So the solution there would be for you to make this B to B. So if I make this, whoops, B to B, and I'll just get rid of this one. And then I make this one C to C, like so. At the moment, my totals won't change, but if I was to then go testing, we'll do a fire. Actually, no, we'll do a grass one again because I've just changed the grass one for now. You can see it's bumped it up. This one wouldn't. If I make this fire, this won't change. This one will, but this won't change because this one is only looking in this range. So think about that when you're creating when you're working with these. However, a SUMIF, like we've looked at, is a way for you to filter things down in a couple of levels. So we're asking Excel, I'll go back to this one. We're asking Excel here, what is the total number? The best way to look at this is, what is the total number of grass, if you work backwards, the total number of grass points. In this column, I'm using grass. How many of those does that add up to? Great for things like if you're adding up results where you might have a different grading system, meets expectations, exceeds expectations, needs attention, whether you're looking at using some kind of, where we're filtering things out by department. How many staff do we have? How many staff do we have in each department? What's the total salary in each department? What are the commissions for things based on, if we've done sales and the sale is worth X amount, how much have we made where the property sales in this area are more than this amount? How many property sales have we made in each different area? How many sales has each different salesperson made? What's the total revenue for the company? So there are lots of different ways that you can apply a SUMIF without having to manually extract data and produce lots of different cells of data to add up. You can do it all in one. So I hope that has demystified an if and a SUMIF for you a little bit. Now remember, this is when we're starting to take Excel and ask it to do more than simply add, subtract, divide, multiply. So we're not using pure mathematics anymore. We're bringing in logic. And at the end of the day, Excel is still a machine. It's a very powerful machine and it's a very powerful system, but it is still a computer-based program. It is a logical-based program. So if you miss any of the steps or you don't quite get the data right, you're not going to get the right result. My last tip for you is to always go back and check manually to make sure that you've got your function set up correctly. So in the examples we've used, you could go back and literally look at with the ifs, we're just literally looking at the data and saying, yep, that should be that, that should be that. With our SUMIFs, you may need to go in and do a quick check, a spot check of an example to make sure that you've got everything right. So with our Pokemon example, you might jump into that table and manually add up those pieces and make sure that it hasn't missed anything. The other thing to do is to always make sure that you change and check that when the data changes, your results change, because that means it's reading it properly as well. So I really hope that has helped. It's a really fun function to get your head around and be able to use, because it's going to save you loads of time and it's going to help you create and manage data sets in a much more efficient way. So I hope it's been really helpful. If you have any questions about working with these functions, pop a comment on the video or get in touch directly. I am hanging out on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Threads, and you can send me a message there if you just search for Thrive Admin Services. Have an awesome day.